This is part 10 of A Wolf Amongst Lions by Kallypso. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy and subscribe for future stories. Please check the description for a full list of tags and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's continue. Chapter 58, Many Farewells. Arya was beginning to go mad staying in her room. She knew that walking too much could aggravate her wounds, but she doubted just a short stroll would harm her. She merely had to be careful. So it was one morning, when she felt as if she was about to jump out of her skin from the boredom, that she tossed her book to the side and eased herself to her feet. She tugged on her shoes and her winter clothing with painstaking effort, then opened the door and stepped into the hall. Her two guards were both surprised to see her up and glanced nervously between themselves. "Lady Arya, should you be moving?" "The Maester said this morning that I was allowed a short walk," Arya lied smoothly. "Don't worry, I won't be long." She continued past them, trying to walk as normally as possible so that they wouldn't suspect. She moved along the wall, keeping her hand against the stone to steady herself. The wind was not as chilling as usual and the sun had come out that morning. It was a good day to be outside, and she had missed it. It was even worth the sharp ache in her side when she took too sudden a step and had to stop to take a few shallow breaths. "I will look forward to basic movements and breathing no longer hurting," she thought. "Lady Arya." Arya said a few silent curses in her head at the sound of Tywin Lannister's voice. Very slowly she turned to lean against the banister, giving him a smile. "Good morning, Lord Tywin. This is unexpected." "It is," Tywin agreed, "seeing as you aren't supposed to be out of bed." "That's not true," Arya lifted her chin. "Maester Luwin told me this morning that I could leave my room for a short while." "What did I tell you that you could do?" Arya let out an annoyed breath. Maester Luwin, why were all of the exactly wrong people finding her at this particular moment? 7 hells, she only wanted to see outside of her room for a few seconds. Tywin raised his eyebrows, not taking his eyes off of Arya. "Apparently, you told her that she could leave her room and walk about." "Did I?" Maester Luwin stopped beside them. "Perhaps I am getting old, I don't quite recall that." Arya glared at him. "Well, you told me I was getting better." "That I did. That does not count as permission to go for a walk unattended," Maester Luwin said. "You need to be mindful of your wounds, Lady Arya. If you open them again, it will only mean a longer recovery." "I am mindful, I'm walking very carefully," Arya said. "Please, just a short time. At least let me sit somewhere differently for a while if I have to stare at my wall for one more moment." She trailed off. Truthfully, it wasn't just the boredom. That room was the last place she had seen Ramsay, and it was the place where she had killed him. Even though he was dead, sometimes she could see his shadow on the walls. "Well, I don't think sitting in a different place will hurt you," Maester Luwin said. "If perhaps Lord Tywin would not mind lending you a hand." He glanced meaningfully at Tywin and the man's brow furrowed, a glint of warning passing through his eyes. "No, I wouldn't," he said coolly. Maester Luwin nodded his head, the smallest smile on his face. Then he left them there. "What was that?" Arya asked. "What do you mean?" Tywin asked. "That was a strange look you gave Maester Luwin just now. Why?" "I didn't give him any sort of look in particular," Tywin said, though his voice was still flat at the assertion. He was lying, but Arya had no idea what he could be lying about. Had he and Maester Luwin talked while she was recovering? Why is my Maester talking to Tywin Lannister? Arya wondered. When did my life grow so strange? "In any case, I was making my way toward the Great Hall. You may join me if you wish." Tywin held out his arm. "Or go back to your room, it does not matter to me." "Fine, Great Hall." Arya accepted his arm, trying not to grip too tightly onto it. At least that's some sort of change. Robb had just finished conducting business in the hall when they arrived, and it was mostly empty by now. Only their family lingered. Jon and Robb were still talking about the Night's Watch. Catelyn and Sansa sat off to one edge discussing some matter in hushed tones. Even Bran was there, sitting in his chair, looking from his mother to Jon. Arya wondered if he had asked permission to leave and go north yet. Tywin guided Arya to the back corner before letting her sit at one of the tables. She let out a breath of relief when she lowered herself onto the wooden bench. The walk had actually taken quite a lot out of Arya, but she was fighting not to show it, which meant, naturally, Lord Tywin noticed. "Wishing you had not left your room?" Tywin asked. Arya glared at him. "No, this is just fine." His mouth twitched and he turned his eyes to Robb and Jon. "Is that your bastard brother there?" My brother, yes, Arya said, a testy note in her voice. She did not like it when anyone called Jon bastard. Refusing to call him bastard does not change what he is, Tywin said. Exactly, Arya said, so there's no need to mention it. Tywin studied her brother. He does have a familiar look to him. Everyone says he looks like my father, Arya said. Yes, Tywin said, though his look was strange. I suppose he does. Be able to leave in a few days, Jon was saying. We're trying to sort through all of the new recruits here so that they don't cause chaos when they arrive at Castle Black. They need to know the rules and situations beforehand. You can stay for as long as you'd like. It's no trouble, Robb said. And if there are any men not suited to the watch, let me know. I will be happy to dispense a different kind of justice. Jon nodded. I will. Robb, Bran raised his voice then. I have a request as well if you'll hear it. Robb glanced up from his conversation with Jon, surprised. Arya quickly exchanged glances with Jon. Bran was asking now, and he was doing so with an audience. That meant he would have multiple opinions and perhaps a better chance at persuading the mother, especially if he could convince Robb. When Jon leaves, I would like to go with him to visit the wall, Bran said. I've wanted to see it for some time now. Their mother stood at once. Bran, absolutely not. They're in the aftermath of a war. It isn't safe there. Winterfell is in the aftermath of a war as well, Bran said. And I was taken hostage in our own Godswood. Years ago I was held hostage here. Why should the wall be any more dangerous than Winterfell? It was an excellent point. Winterfell did not seem quite as safe as it once did when they were children and had nothing to fear. Bran's words made their mother fall silent for a moment as she tried to think of some retort. Why do you want to go to the wall? Robb asked. Why now? Winter is fadding, everyone says so, Bran said. It seemed a good time. Then why not wait until spring has fully settled? Because I would like to go with Jon. Since he is already here, it's more convenient. Bran answered the queries without any hesitation, as if he had thought of every possible question he might be asked. Arya wondered how long he had been planning to find some way to the wall. Ever since the dreams began, perhaps he would have asked earlier had he not been taken by the phrase. Mother is right, Robb said. The wall is a dangerous place in the aftermath of the conflict with Mance Rayder. There could be rogue wildlings still attacking. What if they were to go after you? We would not let that happen, Jon spoke up. The defences at the wall are secure, and all wildlings that managed to clamour to our side of the wall have been dealt with. With the new recruits we will have more hands. Castle Black will be as safe as any other place. Robb glanced at Jon. You're sure of that? Yes, Jon said. It does not matter how safe it is. It's a hard journey north, and even if the wall is no more dangerous, there is no reason to leave, Catelyn said. Bran did not waver. Mother, please, Winterfell feels dangerous to me right now. Even stray shadows make me jump. I keep wondering what will happen if I'm taken again. You won't be, Catelyn said. Maybe not, but the possibility is there and it's tormenting me, Bran said. I'd like to get away for a while. The wall is as good a place as any and I'll be with Jon. He can keep me safe. Their mother turned her sharp gaze on Jon. Have you made such promises to him? I would never take him anywhere without your permission, Lady Stark, Jon said. But yes, I can keep him safe. I would not let anything happen to him, I swear it. Another silence passed through the room, as Catelyn seemed to search for more arguments against Bran's request. In the silence, Arya dared to speak up. Bran's not wrong to want to get away from Winterfell for a bit, she said. It still smells of death, and I've been jumping at the shadows too. Besides, he's always wanted to see the wall. So many Starks have gone there, why not him? I don't think he will be in any danger, Mother, Sansa said. It can be a short visit. We can send some of the household guard with him as well. I hope to take Hoda, Bran said. He can carry me on his back, and he has been seeing shadows on the walls too. The Boltons were cruel to him when they had the castle. He could use some time away from the keep. Hoda would be welcome, Jon said. And if wildlings attack the wall, you have my word that I will send Bran straight back home to you. Catelyn looked around the room, searching for someone who might be on her side. Bran and Jon's opinion she could dismiss easily enough, but Arya and Sansa were backing Bran as well, and Robb seemed as if he might do the same with a bit more urging. Please, Robb, Bran murmured. Mother. I'll allow it, Robb said, if Mother does. Catelyn stared down at her hands, twisting a ring about her finger. Then she looked up at Jon again. If anything happens to him. Nothing will, Jon said. By the old gods and the new, I will keep him safe. Catelyn nodded once, then looked to Bran. Very well, then you may go, but only for a brief time, and you must write while you are there. Bran smiled. Thank you. Arya's mouth twitched. He had actually managed it, but her brother was nothing if not good with words. He was always the best in school between all of them, and always exceptional at arguing as well. Beside Arya, Tywin stood from his seat. Now that you have settled the matter of your youngest, I came to announce my own plans to depart. Ah yes, Robb said. I noticed the Lannister armies have been pulling back over the past few days. I assumed this was coming. I will ride out tomorrow with the rest, Tywin said. In a few days Arya will follow with Jaime's men. Your Maester says she will be fit to travel by then. A few days, Catelyn asked already. She has already stayed much longer than was originally planned, Tywin said. It is time that she returned to the south. She is still healing though, Catelyn said. Why not let her stay until she has healed? Mother, it's fine, Arya found herself saying. She was surprised to hear herself speaking up in favor of this plan, and yet, I'm ready to go south again. Oddly, she wasn't saying such things just to appease her mother or ease her worries. She actually did want to go south. Arya never thought she would want such a thing, but fear of the past was a strange beast. Like Bran, she saw shadows on the wall. Catelyn studied her. You're sure? Yes, Arya said. Besides, you will see me again soon, for the wedding. It won't be 4 years until we meet, not this time. Catelyn nodded once as she seemed to remember the wedding. Then she exhaled. All of my children are making plans to leave me today. Bran, Arya, Sansa as well. Sansa looked away. Arya wondered if she would soon be heading south to the Reach to meet with her soon-to-be groom. She suddenly felt very guilty. It must be hard for her mother saying goodbye to so many children at once. Very well, Catelyn said at last, looking to Tywin. She will leave when Maester Luwin gives permission. Tywin inclined his head and sat again. As attention turned away from him, he glanced at Arya. I did not expect you to make that easier. Neither did I, Arya said, but will be nicer to stare at the countryside for a while instead of the stone. After all, these walls were haunted now, not by ghosts. She did not believe that the dead could come back from beyond, but they were haunted by memories and fear, and that somehow was worse. Not long after, the hall cleared and Arya decided that she was ready to brave her room again. Tywin assisted her halfway there until they ran into Jaime, and he handed her off to him. See that Lady Arya returns to her room. Was she supposed to be out of her room in the first place? Jaime asked. No, of course she wasn't, Tywin said. So tell her guards to make sure that she doesn't leave again for the remainder of the day. I will, Jaime said. I hear we will be leaving soon. We will, Tywin said. You and your men will transport Arya safely south. I imagine it will take you longer with your injuries, but it will be up to you not to lose her this time. I won't, Jaime said. Of course I won't. From there, Tywin left them and Jaime began helping Arya back to her room. It was a painful process, and Arya's wounds ached from the exertion thus far. She would be glad to be back in her bed for once. But before they got very much further, they met with another familiar face. Jon. He looked from Arya to Jaime, his dark eyes narrowing. Lannister. Snow, Jaime nodded once. I was just seeing your sister back to her room. Of course, Jon said, but first I have a question. In the hall today, your father mentioned a wedding down south. 7 hells, Arya thought. Jon doesn't know yet. Whose wedding was he discussing? Jon asked. Jaime looked suddenly rather uncomfortable. Ah, your sister's wedding. Interesting, Jon said. To who? Jaime remained silent, his jaw tightening, but the silence seemed to answer Jon's question clearly enough. He took a threatening step forward. Arya, would you let go of Sir Jaime? Arya saw the rage clear on her brother's face just behind his dark eyes. I don't want to, she said flatly. I'll fall. Lean against the wall then. Jon did not take his eyes off Jaime. His hand was rested on his sword, just for a moment. Arya, do not let go of me, Jaime muttered under his breath. Jon, he only has one hand. This isn't a fair fight, Arya said. Perhaps not, but I'd like to have it, Jon said. Exactly when did you decide you were going to marry my sister? when she was 13, or was it a recent development? I did not decide anything, Jaime said. My father makes the decisions in my family. He arranged the match. I promise I had nothing to do it. I can't imagine you protested, Jon said. I did actually. Charming as your sister is, I wasn't keen on the match at all, Jaime said. He's telling the truth, Jon, Arya said. Jaime and I were both rather furious about it. We still might be furious, except recent events made the impending wedding one of the less difficult matters in our lives. Yes, I'm sure once we're bored in the south, we will start our complaints anew, Jaime said. Really, Snow, I understand you're protective, but I'd rather not fight you in front of the lady. Yes, because the lady is too injured to fight, Arya said. It would be impolite to taunt her with that fact. You see, Jaime gestured to her, we can't possibly fight. Jon's grip slowly relaxed on his sword. No, not here and now, because she does not wish it. He took a step forward. But I don't trust you, Lannister, and if you ever harm her. I'm sure I can imagine what you'll do, Jaime said. Maybe, maybe not, Jon said. Then he looked down at Arya. I'm sorry that you have found yourself in such a situation. I've been in worse, Arya smiled. Don't worry about me, Jon. If he harms me, I'll handle him myself. Jon's mouth twitched into a smile. Then he continued on past them down the hall, his black cape swishing violently behind him. Your brother does have a certain intensity, Jaime commented after a long pause. It's the wolf in him, Arya said. He has the northern look more than almost all of our siblings. Yes, there is a bit of Ned Stark in him, no doubt. Must be why he doesn't seem to like me. He glanced over his shoulder. There's something else familiar about him, though. Like what? Arya asked. I'm not entirely sure, Jaime shrugged, but I don't suppose it matters. The next few days were filled with many partings and goodbyes. The first of them was from Lord Tywin. Much of the Lannister army had been slowly leaving over the last fortnight, but at last nearly all of the red and gold vanished from Winterfell. Still, it strangely did not bring relief to the north. Many of the northern soldiers, in fact, were seen bidding farewell to the Lannister ones. They had once faced each other on the battlefield several times over, but for once they had been allied in a single cause, and that was something rather spectacular. Robb did not seem very sad to see Tywin go, of course, but neither was he glad. Arya watched them observing each other in the courtyard with a certain degree of stiff trepidation, but also something of respect which she had certainly never expected to see. You'll come south when your sister weds, I hope, Tywin said. Your presence will be a statement of peace between our houses. Aye, but I must make sure the north is stable before I can leave, Robb said. If you give me time, I will arrange to come south. That should not be a problem, Tywin said. Arya needs more time to return to full health. It will give you time to get things under control here. Robb nodded once. Safe travels on the road, Lord Tywin. Tywin nodded once. Best of luck with the north. I trust you will see that Arya recovers fully. Her mother spoke up, a courteous but sharp smile on her face. Because I will be coming south as well for the wedding. When I do, I hope to see that no other harm has befallen her. It won't, Tywin said, and we will welcome you in the south, Lady Stark. Will you? Naturally, the kingdoms should see that every Stark is in support of this match. There was a certain ice in both of their tones, but nothing truly aggressive. It was so odd to see her mother and Lord Tywin holding a conversation at all. She wondered for a moment at how often they had spoken when she was imprisoned, and her head spun at the thought. My two worlds have collided because of me, and it is very strange. At last Lord Tywin swung onto his horse and donned his helmet, but before he rode through the gate, he passed by Arya, slowing his horse in front of her seat. She lifted her chin to look up at him. Yes, Lord Tywin, any last orders? Only that you return to the south in one piece, Tywin said. No more diversions. Arya's mouth twitched. Yes, my lord, I will try my best. Trying does not satisfy me. You will return south, Tywin said firmly. I will then, I promise, Arya said. Safe travels. Safe travels. Then Tywin urged his horse toward the gate. Arya watched until it closed behind him. She would see him again soon, she had no doubt, and this time when she returned to the Red Keep, they would not be aggressively ignoring each other. They seemed to have gotten past their argument, even though they had never truly addressed it. Perhaps they were both content to leave the past in the past. The next day, Jon and Bran took their leave, and that goodbye was infinitely harder. Arya had no idea when she would see them again. She doubted that Bran would be able to make the journey south to King's Landing, and Jon was bound by the Night's Watch to stay. She hugged Bran for quite a long time and told him that she would miss him, and when she was sure their mother was not close enough to overhear, she whispered to him, "Be careful, whatever side of the wall you see, be careful." Bran smiled softly when she pulled back and nodded. "I hope you feel better soon, Arya." Jon hugged Arya once she broke away from Bran. "I'm glad our paths crossed again before you had to leave." "Maybe they'll cross again soon," Arya said, though her voice broke. "I hope so," Jon smiled. "I'll write you if they allow you any letters." "They allow me 2 swords, Jon. Of course they allow me letters." Jon grinned and mussed her hair. "Right, of course." Arya had Robb help her up onto the wall so that she could watch Jon and the new members of the Night's Watch stream off into the thick mist. She exhaled and said a silent prayer of safety for them. She did not much believe in gods, but she would pray to them just in case. The next few days she spent in the company of her remaining family. Sansa tried to guide her through some needlework, laughing gently when she failed miserably. Her mother helped her brush her long, matted hair out. It had grown much longer than it was used to, but her mother bid her keep it that way for a while. "You are welcome to cut it again after you are wed, but you do have such lovely hair, Arya. Your handmaidens will mourn the chance to work with it if you cut it all off." Arya smiled once as she was suddenly reminded of she, who had always wished for her hair to be longer so that she could braid it. She quite missed her old handmaid, and even more than that she missed Tyrion. It would be sweet to see them again one day. For her mother and she supposed she would leave her hair long for a bit. She was not able to spend much time with her brother as he was still very busy, but he ate meals with them when he could. She did sit with the children, however, when they played. Already they seemed to be smiling again, as if the rebellion had never happened. Children were resilient, and she knew these 3 would grow up to be true Starks. More than anything, Arya tried to imprint the walls of Winterfell on her mind. She tried to absorb the memory of every room. The sounds, the smells, the sight of the Stark banner flapping overhead. This was her home after all. If only she could erase the memories of Ramsay from this place, then it would not be so tainted by pain. The next morning, just as a flash of pink cut across the sky, Arya left Winterfell. She embraced her mother and sister as tightly as she could, given her condition. She accepted a kiss on the forehead from Robb and tried not to cry when she felt it. She ruffled little Ned's hair and promised Lyanna she would return soon to play knights with her. Her mother charged Jaime to make sure he protected her on the road, and Jaime promised to do so, running a hand awkwardly through his hair. It had grown quite long over the course of the war, just like hers. At last, after they had lingered too long in the Winterfell courtyard, they passed beneath the gates and started down the King's Road. Arya sat up in the cart that carried her and watched Winterfell grow smaller and smaller until it was like a doll's house on the horizon. Then she heard a howl. Arya turned her head to see Nymeria sprinting down the road, pursuing the cart as quickly as she could. Arya shuddered and called out, "Stop, stop for a minute." They did. Arya stepped out of the cart, nearly falling to her knees as she did, and Nymeria met her there, her great shoulders heaving as she panted for breath. "I almost left without saying goodbye, didn't I? I'm sorry." Arya ran her fingers through Nymeria's thick coat. "We shouldn't part on bad terms again, should we? We don't know when I'll be back." Nymeria let out a low whine, nudging Arya's face with her wet nose. "You shouldn't come with me, girl," Arya murmured. "You wouldn't like it in the south. King's Landing is too crowded. You need the woods and your brothers for company. You'll be happier up here." She swallowed a thick lump in her throat. "Can you take care of them for me? While I'm gone, can keep them safe?" Nymeria stared deep into her eyes for a long while. She could not answer in words, and yet an understanding passed silently between them. A promise. At last Nymeria nuzzled Arya one more time. Then she turned and ran off in the opposite direction. "I suppose I didn't need any rocks to make her go this time." A few tears rolled down Arya's cheeks as she watched her wolf disappear into the woods. Then she lowered her head, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "Arya," Jaime murmured from beside her, "are you ready?" "Yes." A few tears rolled down Arya's cheeks, hidden by her curtain of dark hair. "I'm ready." Chapter 59. The Long Road Home. The journey south was long and slow. Of course, Arya could not ride on horseback with her injuries, so she had to be pulled by cart the whole way through. This made for many delays as they travelled through snow and mud. If they came across an obstacle they could not cross, then they had to find a way around, or else stop for Jaime's men to clear it away. Jaime's men made for a substantial guard for Arya during her journey. Attacking would be foolish, even for the Brotherhood without banners, and after what happened to the Boltons and the Freys, no one would dare try. Still, it never hurt to take precautions. When they could, they stayed at the inns so that they would not be out in the open. Shelter was better for Arya's healing anyhow. The guards and the shelter, however, could not do anything to fight off her nightmares. She had hoped they might cease once she left Winterfell. She had been a prisoner in her own home for a time, and it had made it hard to sleep there even once she was freed. But as the cold faded and the snow turned to mud beneath the wheels of the carriage, the bad dreams persisted. Often she woke in a cold sweat, gasping for breath, her heart pounding against her still healing rib cage. And when she woke, she was always alone. Alone in the back of the carriage, alone in a room where they had stopped for the night, alone with her thoughts. The thoughts were the worst bit, because she could never bring herself to tell anyone what had happened. Her memories were known only to her, so how could she explain her fear without explaining its cause? Fear mixed with frustration, mixed with self-hatred. Ramsay Bolton was dead and gone now. She had killed him herself, but he lingered in her mind, and sometimes she still heard his voice in her ear. Gods, why am I so weak? She wondered more than once. Why did I ever think I was strong? She never voiced these questions or concerns out loud. She hid them from the guards and from Jaime with sullen silence. Whenever Jaime asked after her well-being, she answered him with clipped words or changed the subject. She wanted to forget. Now that it was all over and done with and she was back on the road to King's Landing, she wanted to forget. And to forget, she couldn't talk about it, so she avoided conversation with Jaime when she was shaken from a nightmare. She avoided conversation with everyone. But her nightmares did not wait for a convenient moment to harass her. This one found her one night at an inn on the southern border of the Riverlands. In the dream, she was back in her almost wedding dress, dyed half red from blood. Ramsay Bolton was carrying her back to her room, humming gleefully to himself. "You almost got away from me. I'm glad I brought you back. You're mine now, little wolf." She awoke screaming. As soon as she felt the cry leaving her throat, she clapped a hand over her mouth to smother it, hoping that no one else had heard. It was too much to hope for. Seconds later, the door to her room opened. Jaime stood in the doorway, a hand rested on his sword. "Arya, are you?" "Fine," she said too quickly. The dream lingered in the back of her mind and made her voice shake. "I'm fine, a nightmare, that's all." "Is it?" Jaime asked. "Yes, everyone has nightmares once in a while, Jaime. It's not that strange," Arya said. "You're right," Jaime said, "but this is far from the first time I've heard you cry out in your sleep. This was just louder than the usual scream." Arya felt her body flush with shame. How many soldiers had heard her scream into the night? "Forget about it," Arya said. "I'm fine, you may leave." Jaime did not leave. Rather, he stepped inside the room and closed the door behind him. "How long are you going to feed that lie to me?" Jaime asked. "You know I won't believe it. I haven't believed it since you first escaped." "I don't care." Arya stepped out of her bed, stalking over to the opposite wall. She was still trembling from the dream and she hugged her arms to make it stop. "I don't need your help. I just need a bit of time. A bit of time and it will all fade and I will be back to how I was. In the meantime, stop. Stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm weak." "I'm not looking at you because I think you're weak. It's because I'm concerned." "What do you want me to say?" Arya whirled around to face him. "What do you want from me? Do you want me to break down in tears and admit how afraid I was, how helpless I felt? Do you want to hear about he used to torment me or how I still see him in my dreams?" Her voice cracked. "Will that make you less concerned? Will it make you stop pushing me? Will that help me sleep through the night?" He didn't reply. He stared at her in shock. She realized that a few tears had escaped her eyes and she hurried to wipe them from her cheeks, glaring at her lap. She couldn't look at him. The worry, the genuine, sincere worry made her want to cry more, but if she did, she knew she might never stop. She waited for him to turn around and leave her alone so that she could breathe in peace again. He didn't. He stayed right where he was, until at last he let out a long, exhausted sigh. "I was named to the King's Guard when I was 15, he said. "Youngest King's Guard in the history of the realm." He traced his left hand along the edge of the small table set against the wall, rubbing his thumb against the corner. "At the time, I was fool enough to think it was an honor. I had read great tales about the knights who defended their noble kings, and I was to be one of them. It was a proud moment for me. Arya studied him warily. She wasn't sure why he was telling her this, but at least he wasn't questioning her anymore, so she would not stop him. Jaime exhaled. It didn't last long. Soon enough I found that the king I served wasn't noble in the least. The sword in my hand was functionally useless when it really mattered, and I wasn't named because of my skill. I was named to be a hostage. A hostage, Arya murmured. Yes, Ares wanted to use me against my father, wanted to burn me alive if my father ever dared to act against his interests. They had a falling out some time ago and, well, I was the heir to Casterly Rock. Why not take that away and keep me close at hand just in case he wanted to turn me to ash? James smiled bitterly. He never did, obviously, but he turned others to ash in front of me. Over and over again I saw men plead for their lives, and women. Sometimes children as well. So many of them burned, including your grandfather and your uncle, and I just watched. I stood there knowing that I should draw my sword, that I needed to draw my sword, but it was so heavy in my hand I couldn't do it. I couldn't fight the king because I swore a vow, and if I did, well, then he would kill me and I was afraid to die back then. He shook his head. I might as well have had a wooden stick. A wooden stick or no weapon at all, Arya thought. Yes, she knew that feeling, that helpless feeling. All the king's guard I thought were so noble couldn't do a thing against that monster, Jaime continued. Not when he raped his wife, not when he burned the innocent, not when his mad cackles filled the keep. We were all useless. The castle felt like something of a prison. He shook his head. And this one time, it was after the rebellion had already started, you see, and he was getting paranoid. He called me to him and gripped my wrist hard in his bony hand. Hard enough to leave a bruise, he said. Why hasn't your father come to my aid yet? Where is he? Why would your father abandon his friends? I didn't have an answer naturally. I stayed silent, but then he smiled at me. It was the worst smile I think I've ever seen in my life, and he asked, Do you think, if I burn you, he will come sooner? Silence rang throughout the tent, and Arya had absolutely no idea what to say. Jaime spoke the words as if he were speaking them for the first time. How long had he kept some of these memories locked away? I don't remember exactly how I replied, Jaime said. I think I said something like, if you wish to burn me, you may. You are my king. I hope that I didn't stammer the words. I hope I sounded brave. But I can't be sure. All I know is he laughed. He laughed and laughed for what seemed like hours until he finally let me go. He exhaled. He didn't burn me, obviously. But sometimes, even years later, I still dream of that laugh and the smile and the threats of fire. He's been dead for so long. I know it for sure because I stabbed him in the back. But he's still in my memories, and sometimes those memories spill into dreams, and I am right back to that 16-year-old boy with a heavy hand and a stick for a sword. So, you're saying Ramsay will never leave my dreams? Arya muttered, clenching her fists so tight that her nails dug craters into her palm. Even decades down the line, he'll still remain. Only a shadow of him, Jaime said. The real monster is dead, Arya. You slayed him yourself, just like I slayed mine. What's left is only an echo, but yes, it may come back to you many years from now. It doesn't make you weak, truly it doesn't. He took a step forward. I can't promise that you won't see him in your dreams. I can only promise to wake you from them when I can, because once you're awake, he can't follow you. Tears filled Arya's eyes and a few trickled down her cheeks. She had fought so hard to keep them back, but they continuously betray her. It's not fair, is it? They were so awful. The Mad King, Ramsay, they deserve to be forgotten entirely. They do, Jaime agreed. Yet here we are, still giving them life with our memories, and we're the ones who hate them most, Arya's drew in a shaky breath. That's not fair at all. More tears were falling. One by one they escaped her, falling to the floor, until Jaime raised his hand and brushed one away with his thumb. You can cry, Arya, he murmured. It's all right, you can cry. And she did. Suddenly her tears went from streams to rivers, to a veritable flood. Every tear she had pushed down or held back started rushing out of her. Tears of pain, tears of fear, tears of grief. They broke from her and her whole body shuddered in their wake. She crumpled at the weight of them and might have fallen to the floor had Jaime not pulled her into his arms. It was not a gentle or tentative embrace, nothing like any of the hugs she had received from her family before she left. They had been afraid of breaking her, but Jaime held on tight, as if she might fall to pieces the moment he released her. She was grateful for that. She had been broken apart at her seams, and she needed someone to keep her together while she mourned. She mourned for her family and their many losses. She mourned for the North, broken by a war. She mourned for Talisa, who had died so cruelly. She mourned for her children, who would never know their mother, and for Robb, who barely had time to grieve her. She mourned for the home she knew as a child, which was no longer safe, which was tainted by some of the worst nights of her life. And more than anything, she mourned for the girl she used to be, that fearless, strong child who had not yet been hollowed out by such fear and pain. Arya knew that even as she put distance between her and Ramsay Bolton and the Dreadfort and Winterfell and every memory that still haunted her, she would never return to that girl. She was a memory now, and Arya grieved her loss. "It's all right," Jaime kept murmuring close to her ear. "It will be all right." "Don't tell anyone about this," Arya choked out. "Wouldn't dream of it," Jaime said, resting his chin on the top of her head. "You've certainly seen me in worse shape, after I lost my hand. Now that was something pathetic." "This feels pretty pathetic," Arya mumbled. "It's not," Jaime said, "I promise." Arya was not sure long she cried. She did not count the seconds, but soon it seemed she had cried every tear in her body, and she was left red-eyed and still. It felt good to release her hold on her emotions, though it was exhausting and more than a little embarrassing. But then, Jaime was not a gossip, nor would he ever mock her for this. She could trust him with her tears. "I think you've been holding that back for some time," Jaime murmured. "Yes," Arya agreed. "Was that enough for now?" "Yes, but don't go yet." "I won't," Jaime murmured. "Not until you command it, my lady." After that night, Jaime did not push her any longer, but perhaps that was because Arya was no longer so guarded around him. She wasn't cured by her breakdown, but at least she was not constantly avoiding him and his questions. They talked more often on the road south, and sometimes she even spoke of what had happened to her at the Dreadfort. She only spoke of it in short bursts, one small fact at a time. He never asked for more than she was willing to give. He listened, and that was enough. Now Arya was not the only one who held knowledge of those memories. He knew as well. He knew how Ramsay used to sneak into her room while she slept and startled her awake. He knew how he would chase her about her small room with a knife and cut at her skin in an effort to make her howl. He knew how he would tell her lies about her family, or restrict her meals, or giggle whenever she snapped at him. "Why do people like him always laugh?" Jaime asked. "You'd think, being so terrible, they would have the decency to be miserable with themselves." "Ramsay didn't have decency. I don't even think he knew the meaning of the word." Arya poked at her food. "But he wasn't mad. Most times he knew exactly what he was doing." "I always wondered with the Mad King," Jaime said. "I wondered how much of it was insanity or just intentional cruelty." "Which is worse?" Arya asked. "That they don't know how terrible they are, or that they do and they don't care?" "I don't see a need to rank them," Jaime said. "Both are terrible." Speaking her memories in the air made them less monstrous, perhaps because Jaime didn't treat her as fragile because of them. He didn't coddle her or look at her like some broken thing. He spoke with her just the same as ever, sly remarks, crooked smiles, pointed questions. It was nice, familiar. The nightmares did not stop, but there were less of them. Arya's body had more time to heal on the road. The rocking of the cart was no longer such a trial, though she could not fight or ride. But she regained some of her appetite, and she slept a few hours more during the night. Small steps, one at a time. Until at last those small steps found them in the Crownlands, staring at the Red Keep far in the distance. How long it had been, and how much Arya had hated this place when she first arrived here. She still did not like it much, and she was not fool enough to think of it as safe. There was a traitor somewhere in the south, someone with aims against the north. She would have to discover the culprit soon before they tried anything again. "It's been nearly a year," Jaime observed from his horse. "To think we were only supposed to be gone for a few moons." "We were supposed to marry as soon as we returned too," Arya said. "Perhaps this was all our way of delaying the match." "We need to find better ways to put off the wedding," Jaime said. "Ones that involve less war and physical harm." "Agreed," Arya said. "And if there is physical harm, it's your turn." "Planning to push me down the stairs, Lady Arya?" "Whatever you think will work best." Jaime laughed once. "Well, mustn't keep father waiting anymore. He'll want to see you are safe." Then he urged his horse and the rest of his men forward. Arya lifted her chin as they continued along the road, staring up at the Red Keep. She wondered, not for the first time, what new trial the great castle would place at her feet. Already she had faced Joffrey, Littlefinger, Roose Bolton, Ramsay Bolton. She wondered who would next earn a place on her list. Chapter 60, A Shadow in the Garden. King's Landing had been suspiciously calm when Tywin returned. When he entered the Red Keep, he expected to see the fingerprints of the so-called Southern traitor everywhere he looked. After all, the Northern Rebellion had drawn Tywin away from the capital. If the traitor meant to work any mischief, his absence would have provided the perfect opportunity. But there was nothing visibly wrong. Kevan had been advising Tommen properly, and his grandson had carried himself well as king, alongside his Queen Margaery Tyrell. The people of King's Landing seemed to favour them, especially because of the short winter. The common folk said the gods had blessed Tommen's reign with an early spring. Foolish as that prospect was, it did decrease the repugnant incestuous rumours about Jaime and Cersei. After all, would the gods bless the reign of a king born of such sin? The gods do not bless or curse, Tywin thought. They watch and do nothing and let the world run as it pleases. Regardless, the Southern traitor was clearly not trying to destabilise Tommen's reign. Rather, they were targeting Tywin, and though he had a rather long list of enemies, there were very few who would openly tangle with him. He had considered the possibility that either Varys or Pycelle could be the traitor. After all, Littlefinger had proved treacherous. Why not the others on the small council? But Pycelle had always been particularly loyal to the Lannisters and had helped Tywin to overthrow the Targaryens. And Varys, he was too intelligent to place his hope in the Freys and the Boltons. If the Spider wanted to move against Tywin, he would have picked a better horse. Then there were the Tyrells. As the Lannisters' principal rival in Westeros, it was not so strange to consider that they were trying to gain a tighter grip on the realm. Margaery Tyrell was queen, but Olenna Tyrell was not the type to settle for merely that. If the Tyrells wanted to expand their reach, then Tywin was squarely in her way. Perhaps Lady Olenna had engineered this to make the Lannisters more reliant on the large and rested Tyrell armies. Or to get Tywin out of King's Landing for a time, so that Margaery could dig her talons further into Tommen. But that would be an extreme measure. Even if Olenna knew that Tywin favoured Arya and guessed that he planned to match her to his son, he doubted she would target the Stark girl or the North. Still, he would not dismiss her as a possibility either. The Brotherhood without banners could have played a part, but they did not have the connections or the resources to truly help the Boltons in their foolish rebellion, so they were perhaps the most unlikely choice. Then the Dornish came to mind. They had refused to come to the royal wedding and had made no attempt to hide their hatred of Tywin ever since Robert's rebellion. No one had more cause to hate him than the Vipers of Dawn, and they were plotters by nature. They could have done this to provoke Tywin, but then again, would they have known to target Arya? Would they have known of the match between her and Jaime? That was unlikely. They also had no reason to target the North. The Starks had played no part in the deaths of their family. Ned Stark was the only one who had spoken against it. No one quite seemed the perfect fit for the traitor, and the question of the culprit consumed Tywin's mind. 7 hells, he wished now more than ever that they were able to pull a name from one of the Boltons. It even crossed his mind that there was no Southern traitor. Roose Bolton could have offered a name only to try to make peace with Tywin, but maybe he had acted on his own with the Freys, with no aid at all from the south. Perhaps his spies had discovered Arya's betrothal to Jaime. There was no way to be sure. Tywin would have to set the Spider to the task of rooting out the culprit before it drove him mad. He was thinking of that very issue when Jaime arrived in his office, his clothing still flecked with mud from the road. That was a relief at least, one less problem to occupy his mind. "So you've returned," Tywin said. "I hope that Arya is with you and not missing again." "Yes, father, she's here as promised," Jaime said, "but there are quite a few stairs to your tower. Climbing all of them would hardly be good for her health." Tywin nodded once, not allowing himself to look relieved at all. Finally, Arya was back in King's Landing where he could keep a closer eye on her. "How is her health?" "Better," Jaime said. "She can stand and walk now without much trouble. Within another moon's turn, I believe she'll be back to normal, physically at least." "Physically," Tywin repeated. Jaime looked away, his jaw tight. "She has told me some of her trials when she was a captive. It will be some time before that bastard stops stalking her dreams." Tywin's grip tightened on his quill, and he tapped the dry tip irritably against the paper. Yes, he imagined that was the case. Ever since her rescue, Arya Stark had a new haunted look about her that she wore like a thin veil barely visible but present. "I have a request," Jaime said, "to postpone the wedding a bit longer, just until she has more time to get her bearings. I can't imagine her being the centre of attention right now. She might take out some poor nobleman's eye. Tywin exhaled. I already meant to postpone the wedding until Robb Stark regains a steady hold on the north. His presence is crucial to showing Westeros our new alliance. That will give her time enough to heal, don't you think? Jaime hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it should. Are you hoping to escape this match again? Tywin asked. It isn't that, though I'm sure Arya would be relieved if she could, Jaime said. I was concerned for her, that's all. Yes, concerned. Jaime had been concerned about Arya for quite some time now. At one time or another he had helped her out of obligation. Now there was something personal about it. Perhaps his son and ward both resented the idea of marriage, but neither resented each other. Tywin would not have cared if they had, but he supposed it did help that their apparent friendship had warmed so much over the past few years. And the traitor, Jaime asked at last, any ideas? Tywin shook his head, turning his gaze to the window. No, nothing certain anyway, be on your guard, tell Arya to do the same. I don't have to tell her, Jaime said with a wry smile. She never takes her guard off. It was warm and clear on the day that Arya returned to King's Landing, and she found herself wandering the gardens. If Bran was certain of a false spring, it did not show itself here. It was actually rather nice to feel the warmth of the sunlight, and after so many months of being locked in a single room, she preferred to be outdoors. As she walked, she flipped her knife in hand. Grand Maester Pycelle had checked her wounds after she returned and recommended that she still not exert herself, but she could move her hands easily enough without causing any harm, so she twirled her knife between her fingers, trying to make up for all of the practice she had lost while she was captive. It was comforting to have easy access to a blade again. At least if anyone attacked her, she would have a chance. She rounded the corner and caught a flash of golden armor some distance away. Kingsguard, and with them she recognized Tommen and Margaery, out for a stroll in the gardens. For a moment Arya did not move, wondering if she should say hello, but then she stepped back, hopping to disappear into the shadows again. She was not sure she wanted to meet with them again when she was still recovering. But before Arya could fully duck behind the hedges, Tommen turned and caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of his eye. A smile split his face. Lady Arya. Arya stilled and swallowed hard. Well, 7 hells, I should have been quicker. She forced a smile as he and Margaery approached, clasping her hands behind her back to hide her fingers and her knife. My king, my queen, I apologize for not already coming to find you. No need to apologize for that. Margaery rested a hand on her arm. We are simply glad to see you well. We heard so many awful rumors when you were in the north. It was a relief to hear that you were alive. Yes, Arya said, heat rising to her cheeks at the idea of the court passing around rumors about her. She hated to think what those rumors might say. I am alive. And King's Landing is welcoming you back, Margaery said. Perhaps the gods created this beautiful day just for you. I rather doubt it, Your Grace, Arya said, but I appreciate the sun nonetheless. Margaery smiled. Arya never could tell what the woman really thought of her because she was so adept with her courtesies. Well, you simply must join us for some tea. I know Tommen would be delighted to have you. Then perhaps you can set a few of these rumours straight for us. Arya did not want to do that. She did not want to tell Margaery or sweet Tommen anything about what had happened to her. Neither one of them had faced much hardship in their lives. Neither one of them had really seen war. How could she bring herself to explain any of it? And yet she knew she could not refuse, and Tommen did look so pleased by the idea of her joining them. So she set her mouth in a smile and dipped into a sort curtsy. Of course, I would be delighted. There were rumours you lost all of your fingers, Margaery observed, pouring Arya some tea, but I can see that is not true. No, I only lost 2. It seems the rumours exaggerate, Arya said. 2 is a lot when it comes to fingers, Tommen said. He studied her mangled hand. Does it still hurt? No, not anymore, Arya said. This is one of my oldest wounds. It healed some time ago, and I am beginning to get used to its new shape. If it would help, we could have some false fingers made for you, Tommen said. Perhaps you could wear them like a glove. Uncle Jaime has a fake hand, why shouldn't you have fake fingers? As long as they aren't golden, I wouldn't object, Arya said. No, not golden, silver, Margaery said. That would suit you well. Or simple metal, steel perhaps, Arya said. Something practical would suit me fine. But to be honest, I hadn't thought of getting new fingers. I use my left hand more than my right. That is lucky, Tommen said. Are you still good with your knife? Of course I am, Arya said, and ready to protect you if ever you need my help again, your grace. Tommen smiled. Lately I have not needed much protection. The people are in good spirits, much better spirits than when Joffrey was king. Because Joffrey was a terrible king, Arya said. Of course they are happier for you, you are a kind person. Tommen flushed slightly and looked down at his lap. Kind people do not always make good kings either. That sounds like something from your grandfather, Arya sighed. I can almost hear it in his voice. It is, Tommen said. I hear you two are speaking again. Did you resolve your conflict? Arya pulled at the fingers of her right hand. Well, we both quietly agreed to forget that it happened. Tommen raised an eyebrow, and that counts as solving it. Like you said, we're speaking, Arya said. That's good, Tommen said. He was very worried about you. When he received the letter from the Boltons, he was absolutely furious. He requested permission to leave the capital, but he would have gone if I said no or not. Tommen shivered. Not that I would ever tell him no. The Boltons and the Freys challenged him, Arya said. He doesn't like being challenged. No, and he didn't like them threatening you either, Tommen said. Arya nodded once, sipping her tea. It was a strange thing that Tywin did seem to genuinely favour her, even after their great argument. It was so strange that it had been easier for Arya to deny it. But how could she really do that after everything that had happened in the north? And how is your sister? Margaery asked. She may have mentioned her correspondence with my grandmother. She did, Arya said. Your brother Willers, what is he like? Oh, he's a wonderful older brother. Very kind and gentle, Margaery said. He used to be quite good at riding before the accident. Now everything physical is a bit more difficult for him, but he's still as good as he was before it happened. That's good, Arya said. If he is to marry my sister then. A shadow fell over Arya, and a sudden burst of panic shot through her body. The teacup slipped from her fingers and she whipped around, drawing her knife in one smooth motion. But she found only a handmaid behind her, bringing more cakes. The young woman's eyes widened when Arya started, and she backed away a few steps, curtsying in apology. Forgive me, my lady. No, Arya said softly, relaxing her grip. Forgive me. Slowly she looked back at Tommen and Margaery, who were looking at her with the same surprised expression. Shame flushed through Arya's body and she stood abruptly. I'm feeling ill. I think I should return to my room, I'm sorry. Then she started away before they could reply. Arya really did feel sick as she walked away. For all of the time she had spent healing and coping with her terrible memoirs, there was still so much weakness in her. She had flinched a simple shadow, and in front of Tommen and Margaery no less. No, she wasn't going to accept this any longer. Perhaps she could not yet fight, but there were other ways that she could train, and she would train as much as she needed to feel strong again. Arya forced herself up the steps to the Tower of the Hand. She stopped once near the top to catch her breath, but other than that she felt no real pain at the walk. It gratified her to be able to do that much, and she could not wait for the day when she would be able to run and fight again. She stepped into the chamber of the Hand and closed the door behind her. Lord Tywin was writing like he often did, and it took him a moment to notice her. When he did, he carefully set down his quill. How did the stairs treat you? They didn't kill me, Arya replied. Soon I will be able to return to my practice with my swords. I'm sure you will, Tywin said, but you clearly came with a purpose today. Arya lifted her chin. She aware of doing it, but she didn't lower her head again. Just for today she would allow herself the nervous tick. You want me to marry Jaime, which means you want me as the Lady of Casterly Rock after you die. Correct. Correct, Tywin said. Well, I know little to nothing about the West or its lords or its people, Arya said. I know the North like the back of my hand and all its families and sigils, but the West is foreign to me. If I become its lady, I have little knowledge of how to rule it. Perhaps I am depending on Jaime to rule, Tywin said. Then you could have given him any wife, Arya said. But you didn't. You chose me and you seem very set on that choice. I don't make a habit of changing by decisions, Tywin said. Why this sudden desire to learn? Arya's jaw clenched. When I was a prisoner. She paused for a moment to gather her thoughts. When I was a prisoner, I realized that my power has always rested on the power of other people. When my father was alive, people treated me well because I was a Stark of Winterfell. And after I became your ward, people mostly let me alone because they did not want to insult you. When I met with someone who didn't care about that, My strength failed and I couldn't do anything. Because the Boltons didn't fear me, just you. She clenched her fists. I'm not willing to rest on that anymore if people respect me or fear me. I want it to be because of my name and my abilities alone, not because of my father, not because of Jaime, not because of you. I need to find my own power. Tywin was silent for a long while as he considered this. He tapped one long finger absently against the desk, and Arya felt her nerves rise in the silence. Why was he so damn fond of silences? I always intended to teach you, Tywin said. But it happens that soon after I engaged you to my son, you came to my office to shout at me, and then did not return for the better part of a year. Arya's eyes narrowed. You were ignoring me too. I didn't say I wasn't, Tywin said. Fortunately that disagreement is behind us. He steepled his fingers. I have many other responsibilities as Hand of the King and they occupy most of my day, but in the free hours, I will teach you what you need to know. Arya exhaled. Good, this was exactly the sort of distraction that she needed until she was well enough to fight. Thank you, my lord. She shifted from foot to foot. Can we start now? A shadow of a smile passed over his face and he nodded at the bookshelf. Fetch the book with the golden spine on the middle shelf. It contains a detailed history of the Westerlands. That's where you start. Arya nodded and hurried to fetch the book. Then she settled herself in the corner of his office and began reading. So long as she was forced into this position, she would train to do it well, and she would train to one day surpass even Tywin Lannister. Right now, people did not harm her because they feared him, but she wanted people to fear her for her name and her name alone. It was time to find power of her own. Cersei was furious by the Boltons' failure. Whether or not they won their little rebellion was of no consequence to her, but they could have, at the very least, made Arya Stark useless to her father. They could have married her to a Frey or a Bolton. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that she couldn't marry Jaime. They could have killed her and Cersei would not have cried a tear. But Arya Stark lived on, unmarried, injured but recovering. The only bright spot in all of this was that the Boltons had not given up Cersei's name. According to her sources, Roose Bolton had only told her father that there was a traitor in the south. She did not like him having even that much information, but there were plenty of snakes in the capital. Still, even that small bit of knowledge meant that she had to keep quiet for a while. If she acted so soon after the Boltons' failure, she would become a suspect. It was better that her family forget she exists for a while as they scrambled to find the traitor. Perhaps another unfortunate fellow would be blamed. Her father wouldn't suspect her easily. He had a blind spot when it came to his children. He didn't understand a single one of them, but he also didn't want to believe them capable of moving against him. That was the only reason he had never discovered her affair with Jaime. Willful ignorance. She could count on that to protect her here if she did not do anything stupid. She merely had to save her other plans for the right moment. And when the time came, she would pluck the Stark weed out of her family. Then everything would be as it should again. Chapter 61, Strategic Value. Arya had only a basic knowledge of the Westerlands from her schooling. Maester Luwin had always made them memorize the major families of Westeros, along with their words and deeds. But Arya did not know their history, nor did she know more than a few of the other lords in the area. The lords she did know were those who had say on Tywin's war council when she was his cupbearer. Her father always insisted that if a man was to rule their people, they must know their people, and Arya was determined to do the same. So she faithfully read every book Tywin gave her and memorized the names as best she could. Then at night, when he had completed his important tasks for the day, he would test her knowledge. House Cerrit of Silverhill has a peacock for a sigil. They are in control of several silver mines, and their words— Arya thought for a long moment, looking up at the ceiling. So many words they began to swim together in her head. Wait, I remember. They're something arrogant. Yes, they are, Tywin said. Oh, Arya snapped her fingers. I have no equal, that's it. I have no rival, Tywin corrected her. Arya crossed her arms. That's practically the same thing. Tell that Lord Cerrit and see how he takes it. He's as proud as his words suggest, Tywin said. What of House Westerling? 6 white seashells against sand. They're from the crag. Their words are honour not honours, Arya said. I remembered those because I don't know what it means. What does it mean? Tywin stacked a series of letters together on his desk. He was always organising and reorganising his belongings, never tolerating any disorder at all. I'm not familiar with the exact origin, but I believe it means that one's personal honor is more important than receiving honor or glory from others. That sounds like a northern notion, Arya said. You are aware that the northern families aren't the only ones that value honor, aren't you? Tywin raised an eyebrow. In fact, I'm quite certain that more than one northern family proved themselves dishonorable recently. Arya frowned. Yes, I know, give me another house. You haven't said what the Westerlings trade in yet, Tywin said. Arya's brow knit together. Fish because of the seashells. You're guessing, Tywin said. It was a statement, not a question. Yes, I'm guessing. Am I wrong? Yes, Tywin said. They deal in some fish, but they used to be in charge of a great many mines. Unfortunately for them, some of their mines have dried up and others have been sold away. They've lost a great deal of their power over time and can barely maintain the crag. They rest on their name now. It's all they have left. I suppose I shouldn't tell them that to their face, Arya said dryly. No, there's a long history of goodwill between the Lannisters and the Westerlings. It would be foolish to spoil it, even if they are in decline. Tywin finished with his papers and leaned forward. You seem to know the names and words well enough, but I have a better question for you. Which of our allies are most valuable to us? Arya's brow furrowed. Most valuable. Yes, Tywin said. Imagine that two forces attack the Westerlands at the same time. One attacks the Westerlings and one attacks the Cerrets. They both request aid, but you only have enough soldiers to send help to one place. They are of equal distance from you, so that is not a deciding factor. Only the worth of the family. Who would you choose? The Cerrets, because they have the working mines, Arya said. The Westerlings can fight for the crag, but if it's dried up like you say, it's better to have them flee than stand and fight. But if the Cerrets were defeated, the enemy would gain the mines. Right. Correct, Tywin said. You would have to make a show of sending some aid to the Westerlings, but only minimal soldiers. The Cerrets' land is more important and they have more to offer House Lannister. You save them. He tapped one finger against the table. Another scenario. One group attacks the Fermands of Fair Isle and the other attacks House Swift of Cornfield. To whom do you give aid? House Ferman, Arya said, because of their important position on the coast, not to mention they have the strongest navy in your army. They do, Tywin said, and that's exactly why you are wrong. Anyone who attacked them would do so from the coast, and they are well fortified to withstand an attack of that kind. Even if they weren't, their ships could turn most enemies back. We could send a few ships, but in all likelihood they would be able to handle the situation themselves. House Swift, on the other hand, is in charge of the majority of our crop production and is in a much less defensible position. Any enemy attacking would undoubtedly go after the fields, if they were smart. It could devastate the Westerlands and make us more reliant on the Reach for food imports, and you must never let the Westerlands become reliant on anyone. He had a good point. Arya had read quite a bit about the economic exports of the West. Mining was their chief trade, and they had only limited farmable land. Much of the landscape was mountainous and rocky, not nearly as fertile as the Reach. That made the farmable land they did have all the more valuable, but Arya wasn't so willing to concede. Not yet. But if the Fermands request aid despite their great navy, then that must mean that they are dealing with an especially dangerous force. One that could devastate the Westerlands if they succeeded. Tywin seemed almost amused by her defending her position. True enough, but even if the force was large, the Fermands are competent enough to hold them back for a time. Harry Swift is not altogether bright or competent. He would need more help. Arya's jaw clenched. In this theoretical scenario, do these two attacks come from the same source? Tywin tilted his head to the side. Let's pretend that they do. Then a smart lord would have sent the larger force to the Fermands, since they are a greater threat. Better we send a small party to help the Swifts, and send the majority of our forces to help the Fermands to deal with the greater army. If the lord is smart, you'd be playing into their hands, Tywin said. They'd hope to draw your attention with a high-profile attack on the Fair Isle while they send a small group to cut across our best farmland. Then they can make an easy retreat before we can surround them. Or they could do what your brother did. Send a small force against Fair Isle as a distraction while the largest force decimates their real target. Arya exhaled, finally willing to concede defeat. She could not think of a rebuttal to that, but Tywin Lannister really was impossible to argue with. All right, the Swifts then. Tywin's mouth twitched. You made good points, but don't expect to be a master military commander just yet. You've had one battle plan play out successfully, and it was one that relied a great deal on your enemies making mistakes. You have much more to learn." Arya flicked a strand of hair out of her eyes, still very annoyed. What are the odds of those scenarios actually playing out? "Lo," Tywin said, "especially so soon after a large war. No one will be eager to tangle with us any time soon, but knowing our most important allies serves other purposes. You must know who you can rely on in war but also in peace. You must know who you want most loyal to you and who you can afford to slight without any worry. Most of ruling is not war. Don't let the past few years fool you. They have been abnormal ones." Arya nodded once. She understood the necessity of it, she supposed, but she hated failing Lord Tywin's tests. It motivated her to work harder than ever. She read the history of the family as much as she read about the current houses. After all, it was important to know the roots of the house she would soon join. She read about the legendary Lan the Clever, who stole Casterly Rock out from under House Casterly. There were many versions of the tale, each more ridiculous than the last. In some versions, snuck inside of the castle and spent the nights howling and running about, convincing the lords that the castle was haunted. In others, he infested the castle with rats and chased out the Casterlys. One tale even claimed that he had snuck a pride of lions into the castle to devour Lord Casterly alive. There were doubts about Lan's existence, of course. He seemed more a figment of some storyteller's imagination, but there was no other written origin of the Lannister family, so Arya supposed he would do. She read about the kings of the West, all the way to Loren Lannister, who knelt to the Targaryens on the field of fire. Loren had survived the day to pen more than one gruesome account of that fateful day. His description of his men burning alive was rather haunting to behold. Arya had always loved reading about the Targaryen conquerors, but she could not imagine facing them or their dragons in combat. Swords meant nothing when dragons flew overhead. After Aegon's conquest, Lannisters became lords instead of kings, participating in every major event of the Targaryen dynasty. They were hands, advisors, knights, allies, enemies, and everything in between, and they endured as so many great families fell into nothing. Reading about the rise and fall of families helped Arya to understand Tywin Lannister's obsession with his legacy. A great line could end at any time. Even the dragons themselves had fallen. And then there were the records of Robert's rebellion and the events that led to it. For the very first time, Arya actually read about her long-time captor's life. She knew some of the stories about him. Everyone did, but she never really understood why everyone feared him so completely. She understood after she read the story of the Rains of Castamere. The Rains and Tarbecks had refused to repay the Lannisters the gold they owed, not believing that Tytos, Tywin's father, was strong-willed enough to fight for it. Tywin responded by raising an army and marching on Tarbeck Hall. Once he had crushed the Tarbecks, he turned his armies on Castamere. The Rains could not match him in the field, so they retreated within and hid in the mines, which were defensible and well stocked with enough food to last everyone quite a long time. Tywin responded by diverting all of the nearby water sources so that they flowed into this supposed sanctuary. Everyone within drowned to death, old and young, men and women, lords, ladies, and small folk. He killed every one of them. On the surface it was a brilliant plan, and Arya understood why it had earned Lord Tywin a song. She understood why once, when another lord would not pay him, he had only sent a musician to that lord's court to play the song, and the lord at once gave up the desired gold. Tywin had earned respect and fear because he showed how far he was willing to go for his family. But Arya could not imagine killing that many. She had her list, of course. She had always had her list, but she wouldn't kill small folk if it meant eliminating those names, would she? If it had meant killing Ramsay Bolton, would she have killed children? She wasn't sure. She hoped she wouldn't, but... "Something is troubling you," Tywin said flatly. Arya blinked rapidly and looked up at him. He was reading over a letter, the usual disinterested expression on his face. What? "You've been staring at that wall there for some time. It didn't strike me as productive," he replied, glancing briefly up from the words. "I read the full story about the Rains of Castamere," Arya said. "Did you?" Tywin did not seem particularly concerned. "And what was your assessment?" "I wondered if the situation needed that much force," she said. "Killing everyone in the keep, drowning them like rats or burning them alive in their own halls. Do you think that was necessary?" Tywin set down his letter. The destruction of the Rains and Tarbecks was necessary, yes. They had made a sport of insulting my father and the Lannister name. The family was in danger of becoming a joke, and the Westerlands needed a stern reminder that we were to be feared. They got one. None of my bannermen have betrayed me or even thought to betray me since. And did everyone in the keep need to die for that, even people who had nothing to do with the insults? Arya asked. Perhaps not, Tywin said. I won't argue the necessity of killing every maid and kitchen boy. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it was the most effective way to end them without a long drawn-out siege. Then we could deal with the Tarbecks. I could have handled it more peacefully, or I could have killed the guilty and the guilty alone, and perhaps that would have been enough, but I was not willing to take the risk. He turned his gaze to the window. It doesn't particularly matter anymore. It happened and it's done with. It had the intended effect. Sometimes it takes severe action to gain people's respect. Will I have to do something so severe? Arya asked. If I want to be feared and respected, will I have to drown out a castle? Tywin paused for a moment before responding. No, likely not. The Lannisters were a joke when I turned old enough to do something about it. The Lannisters are not a joke now. But in the future, when I die, someone will undoubtedly try to test Jaime to see if he can truly fill my shoes. They will test you as well. And when they do, you must respond in kind. Show them that even though I am dead, you will not accept anything less than the same respect. Arya nodded once. I can manage that. Tywin inclined his head. I have no doubt you can. Arya's studies continued with regularity. They helped her avoid sleep when she feared nightmares. And they helped her avoid thinking too much about the past. She had a new goal now, and she was working steadily toward it as her body continued to heal. As a result, she spent an awful lot of time in the Tower of the Hand. One night, when the words of Arya's book were starting to blur together, but she still did not feel like braving sleep, Arya's eyes focused on the broken king sat on the edge of Tywin's desk. It still amazed her that he had kept it on his desk, especially when he was an organized man who kept everything in their proper place. She rose and wandered over to the desk, picking it up and examining the crack in its crown. Did you wish to take it back? Tywin asked. He was reading through some book when she looked up at him. He did that a lot, asked a question and pretended he wasn't actually interested in the answer. No, I did think it was a shame it wasn't being used for its purpose, though, Arya said. It's been some time since I've played Cyvasse. You mentioned that game before, Tywin said. Yes, Arya looked up at him. You may as well learn to play if you plan to keep the Broken King. I don't have time for games and neither do you, Tywin said. It's a game of strategy. It's perfectly relevant to what I'm learning right now, Arya protested. You tested me with the problem of the Fermans and the Swifts. In this game you strategically decide which pieces to sacrifice in order to achieve victory, except no one dies, they just win and lose. And it's better to practice strategy with lower stakes to avoid making mistakes in the future, she said. Tywin glanced up at her. You seem determined for me to play this game. I am, Arya said. I would like to teach you something for once. He seemed to consider the idea for a long moment. Then he exhaled and turned back to his work. If you can fetch the game and return here before I'm done with this task, then you'll have your game. Arya grinned and went at once for the room, hurrying toward her room. She wasn't sure if Tywin intended for her to run all the way there and back, but it was good exercise, and her body was very nearly healed. She was amazed enough that he had given her any sort of yes. But then, occasionally, Arya was good at getting her way from Tywin Lannister, and she took the small victories when she could. When she returned to the Tower of the Hand, slightly out of breath, Tywin was still at his desk. He set down his work. You have good timing, I just finished. Excellent, Arya said. She proceeded to set up the board and explain to him the value of the pieces exactly how Tyrion had taught her, as well as the goal of the game, to kill the enemy's king. She told him how pieces could move as well, but she refused to give him any more than that. He would have to figure out the best strategy himself. Tyrion had taught her the same way. Every player was different. Some played offense and others played defense, and some were able to mix both. It did not surprise Arya that Tywin was the third kind. He was a keen strategist after all, but he did have one blind spot which she had suspected before they even started playing the game. He ignored the small pieces. The rabble pieces were nothing more than pawns in a grander scheme. They were not powerful and often it was easier to sacrifice them earlier, but they could also slip through the opponent's defences and be instrumental in the final victory. Tyrion was fond of using this strategy, so Arya could never really get her rabble pieces past his lines, and he had beaten her more than once by carefully positioning his rabble where he needed them. Arya played the same kind of game with Lord Tywin now, until she knew she had set a proper trap for him. After several minutes, Arya found herself victorious. The rush of beating Tywin was far greater than that of beating Tyrion somehow. Tywin, who always had to have the last word and always won. For once, she could be better than him at something. She tried not to look too smug as she sat back in her chair. That's my win. Tywin glared at the board for a long moment, as if trying to find exactly where he had made a misstep. How exactly? Because, Arya said, my dragon has your king cornered, but he can't move this way because of my spearmen, and if he moves this way he runs into my rabble. She smiled. You don't want to underestimate the rabble. He glanced up at her. You're enjoying this. I am, thank you for noticing, Arya said. Reset the board then, Tywin said, if you enjoy winning this foolish game so much. Arya wasn't sure why, but the expression on his face made her really laugh. She couldn't remember the last time she had laughed, surely before the business with the Boltons, but it felt good to do it again. For a moment, Tywin seemed caught off guard by the sound, as if he had never expected to hear it from her. Arya quieted herself and apologized. I'm sorry, you really don't like losing, do you? I don't, Tywin said, and I won't again, I assure you, Lady Arya. Arya was still smiling as she reset the board. We'll see. Chapter 62, Teacher. After what seemed like an eternity back in King's Landing, Arya finally got what she wanted from the Maester when she went to have him see to her injuries. Your wounds are much improved, Maester Pycelle said. They've left scars behind, but beneath them they are healed. Arya shifted restlessly. It had been over a moon's turn since she had returned to King's Landing, and her 17th name day had passed. She was tired of being idle, and she longed to practice again. Her left palm itched with the desire to hold Needle and Winter's fury. So, can I exert myself without any worry? I don't see why you would need to exert yourself at all, Pycelle said, rearranging some of the jars on his desk with gnarled fingers. You are back in the safety of the Red Keep now. Arya's eyes narrowed. It was impossible that Old Man hadn't heard rumours of her practising sword play, but she humoured him. I meant for riding a horse. I do like to ride very much. Would galloping upset my wounds at all? Oh no, Pycelle said. I don't believe it will. Riding is perfectly safe, but if you tire or notice any pain you must stop at once. Arya nodded once, already backing out of the room. Riding was okay. That meant fighting was okay as well. She felt her heart lift at the thought. Thank you, Grand Maester. I just remembered that I have to be somewhere in a hurry. Goodbye. She was scarcely out of his sight before she turned and started running for her room. The running was freeing too. The impact no longer rattled broken bones, and her breath no longer felt like a knife through her torso, and after several moons of barely moving, she felt as if she could fly. She retrieved Needle and Winter's fury from her room and made for her usual practice area at once. It was a relief to climb the stairs and step onto the familiar stone. Sun was streaming through the windows of the balcony, and it smelled as she remembered. Even when her world was threatening to fall apart, this place was always consistent, an escape from the political viper's nest of the capital, a place where she could be herself. She set Winter's fury aside for now. Needle was an easier sword to wield after so many months away from her practice, and the fluid nature of water dancing would be kinder to her body. Then Arya took her place at the centre of the room, needle in hand. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath and began. Her movements were sloppy when she started and her steps unsure, but as the afternoon wore on she fell back into her muscle memory. It was like dusting off a room left abandoned, messy at first, but still as it was. She reviewed footwork. She reviewed simple stabs and strikes. She worked meticulously through the basics, knotting the places where her body was still weak. She was so enveloped in her work that she did not hear anyone approach until a late afternoon shadow crossed the floor. She spun around, raising her sword, and Jaime caught the blade with the flat of his own sword. A wry grin crossed his face. You've returned, my lady. Arya relaxed. Yes, Maester Pycelle said I was well enough. Well enough to fight. Well enough to ride, that's close enough. Jaime chuckled, stepping back from her and turning his sword in his hand. I'm glad. I fear I've gotten rusty myself. No one else is as hard on me as you. Arya straightened. Well, I'm back now. That you are, Jaime said. Shall we spar then, Lady Arya? A warm sort of happiness spread through Arya. She had missed this more than she even realized. She smiled. Yes, Sir Jaime, we shall. Over the next several days, Arya spent nearly all of her time split between the Tower of the Hand and her practice room. If she was not sharpening her sword skills, then she was sharpening her mind. There was no time to waste after all. She needed to get back to how she was before. Better even. She needed to improve far beyond her old self. So she practiced with Winter's Fury, she practiced with Needle, she practiced with her throwing knife, she practiced with books and with Saivas. Between her studies, she was busy identifying her weaknesses. Where did she need the most improvement? The answer came to her one day as she was practicing her forms with Needle. She noted that her water dancing had gotten rather sloppy. Years of practicing on her own had earned her some bad habits, and Syrio hadn't come close to teaching her everything she needed to know. She had Jaime, of course, but he was more an expert at the fighting style of the Westerosi knight, and his missing hand made him less adept at that now. Arya would never be able to master the knight's style completely because of her small stature. She could not beat most of her opponents in a contest of strength. Water dancing had always been ideal because it trained the user to be quick and agile instead of merely strong observant and smart rather than forceful. She had learned that her strength only went so far when she faced Ramsay Bolton. He was more than once able to easily pin her against the wall or the floor. She needed to be quick enough to not get caught, even in small spaces. "I have a question," Arya said one late afternoon after she and Jaime finished practicing. She was still turning her sword in hand while Jaime sat and took a break on the nearby crates. He sipped water from his canteen. "I suppose you better ask it then. If I were to ask for a teacher, someone to teach me how to fight better, would your father say yes?" Jaime raised an eyebrow. "Oh, am I not good enough for you?" "I thought I was the teacher between us," Arya retorted. Jaime laughed once. "You have more fingers than I am, that doesn't make you a teacher." "No, it surely does." Jaime shook his head. "What brought this on so suddenly?" "It's not suddenly, it's just that. Well, I want to return to learning water dancing. I think it will be more useful to me in the long run, especially since I don't think I'm going to grow anymore." Arya gestured to her smaller frame. "I used to have Syrio. He was an excellent teacher, but since that I haven't had any real formal training. I've gotten messy." "You're also out of practice from the imprisonment and severe injury," Jaime pointed out. "Then I need to get back in practice, and a teacher can help," Arya said. Jaime considered the idea for a moment. "Well, I don't really see why you need to ask my father about it. He lets you have a sword. Why should he object to someone teaching you how to use one better?" He sheathed his sword. "Let me handle it. I'll see if there are any Braavosi swordsmen in the area." "Water dancers," Arya said. "Good ones." Jaime smirked. "And here I was going to find you an absolutely terrible swordsman. Thank you for clarifying." She smacked him in the arm. For a few days Arya did not hear from Jaime, which did not really concern her, even without her sparring partner. She could practice her skills, and of course, she still had much more to read and study. Tywin had reminded her on multiple occasions to not get too caught up in swinging a sword and neglect her other studies, and she was determined to prove to him that she could do both at the same time. Then one morning, Jaime met her in the hallway as she was on the way to her practice room. He was grinning knowingly. "On your way to swing at an invisible opponent." "I could swing at you as well if you're feeling daring," Arya said. No, Jaime said. "I'm occupied at the moment, but I found you someone else to swing at." For a moment Arya didn't process the words, then her eyes widened. "A teacher?" "Yes, he's waiting for you there." A smile split Arya's face. "You actually, Jaime, thank you." She hugged him before she even thought about it. Then she turned and hurried off down the hall, leaving him alone. A teacher. He had actually found her a water dancing teacher. Years ago, training with Syrio had been the best part of her stay in King's Landing. She hadn't liked it much compared to the north, and she felt so out of place. But when she was with Syrio, she thought she was doing what she ought to do. He gave strange lessons, chasing cats, balancing at the top of the stairs, swinging at him with her eyes closed. But they had all been meant to improve her reflexes, her patience and her power of observation. Even many years later, she could see the value of the lessons that had seemed strange at the time. She doubted she would ever find a water dancing teacher quite as good as him, but at least she could have one to help her pick up where she left off. When Arya arrived at her practice room, she did not see anyone immediately. She crept carefully into the room, looking around to see if he might be hiding behind one of the pillars of the balcony. You are late, girls. Arya's heart stuttered at the familiarity of the voice. It pulsed with pain and hope all at once. Very slowly she turned to see him standing in the corner, 2 wooden swords in his hand. He was missing an eye, and a nasty scar cut from his brow to his jawline, but she recognized him just as she recognized his voice. Syrio. It couldn't be, she must be dreaming or her eyes were deceiving her. Perhaps this man only looked very much like him, but no, it was him, and he was. The Bravosi grinned. Arya, child, not such a child anymore though, a woman grown. You were, Arya's throat was thick with emotion. You were dead. Was I, and when did this happen? Syrio asked. Meryn Trant, he killed you. She had seen him break his stick in half. How could Syrio have fought then? Evidently not. I am here, walking and talking to you. Syrio circled the room. How could you possibly know if I died? You scurried away before you could see what happened. Were you so confident that I had been bested? Arya wasn't sure if she wanted to cry or laugh. She had no idea how to feel at all. No, but so many others had. I assumed. Never assume, Syrio said. Fools assume and die for their trouble. He shook his head. No, I did not die. When Arya Stark fled, I had only a broken sword. I danced between their blades until I was sure you were gone. Then I led them in the opposite direction. They did not even think to look for you instead, not with death on their minds. I sent 2 of them to meet death, though I earned this for my trouble. He tapped his scar. And you escaped? Arya asked. I thought the first sword of Bravos does not run. He does when he must, Syrio said. What must we always say to the god of death? Arya let out a shaky breath. Not today. Yes, Syrio said. How many times have you told him that, child? I've lost count, Arya said, and she had. So many times she had faced the possibility of her own death. When she first escaped the Red Keep, in the pins of Harrenhal, against King's Guard and assassins alike, against the Boltons, against Ramsay. And here she was at the end of all that, still standing. So was Syrio. Against all odds, he had survived too. She was only just letting herself believe it. Good, Syrio said. He threw one of the wooden swords at her and she caught it easily. He dipped into a stance, turning his wooden stick in his hand. And you will say it again. Now, let's see how well you have retained my lessons. Arya exhaled, relaxing her grip on the stick, making it as graceful as Sansa held her sewing needle. Then she settled into the stance of a water dancer. For just a moment, it felt like the old days, and that feeling was impossibly sweet. Arya was right about bad habits. In the first few minutes of her lesson with Syrio, he noted several mistakes in her posture, her form and her movements, but chief among them was the tension. Every part of you is tense, he said. Jaw, torso, leg. Your grip begins light and delicate but clamps down like a wolf's jaws as soon as you go to swing. It's hard to stay relaxed when you're fighting someone for real, Arya said. Yes, but it is necessary, Syrio said. You fight aggressively, fiercely. There is no patience in your movements. I can see it in your eyes. Win, they shout. I must win right now or I will die. He clicked his tongue and wagged his finger. Patience is what you need. But if I'm too patient, then I will give death an opening, Arya retorted. One can be patient but guarded at the same time. Even if one waits, they need not open themselves up to death. No, the waiting sometimes is what keeps death out. Syrio paced around her. When you wait, you have time to see. And when you see, truly see, you understand your opponent. Then, no matter how they strike at you, their sword will not find you. Arya had gained a habit of striking first. She knew that. When she saw an opponent that could kill her, she sometimes lunged at them without looking at all. It had kept her alive in desperate situations. But in an ordinary fight, she knew that Syrio was right. She needed to be patient and watch. If she lunged blindly before she knew how her enemy moved, it could be the death of her. In between practicing, she asked him as many questions as she could. Where did he go after he left the Red Keep? Where had he been since then? What brought him back to King's Landing? How did he find her? Syrio answered her questions patiently, though not with many details. I went many places, all away from the shadow of the Red Keep, where some angry knight might recognize me. I returned when I discovered all those I fought were dead, and no longer a threat to me. Work is better in King's Landing. A one-handed knight had asked for a Bravosi to teach a lady. I wondered if that young lady might be Arya Stark, and here she is. It was all coincidence, really chance, that brought them back together, but Arya was not in the habit of arguing with happy coincidences. She was so deeply glad to see Syrio that it lifted her heart every time she found him for practice. "Did you know," Arya asked Jaime, "that he was my old water dancing teacher?" "I never met the man, but you had mentioned his name," Jaime said. "I thought it might be him, unless Syrio is a common name in Bravos. But then again, how many first swords named Syrio could there be?" He shrugged. "I thought you would be glad to have a teacher regardless." "You were right," Arya said. "It is good to have him back. I'm not practicing blind for once." When Arya was not training with Syrio, she was practicing with Jaime and testing some of her new lessons on him. And when she was not with him, she was in Tywin's office. If she had any extra time, she practiced working a bow with her mangled hand. It was a good way to increase the strength of her 3 fingers, and she knew that long-ranged weapons should not be neglected. It had been too long since she had used a bow, and she was lousy at it. All the more reason to practice. All the more reason to get better. Only rarely was she in her room alone. She only returned when she was exhausted from the day and sure to fall right to sleep. In deep sleep she could stave off the dreams. Her strength was returning to her bit by bit. She felt strong and focused, and with that strength came more of the patience that Syrio demanded. She felt calmer when she fought with him, swift and powerful as a rushing river. Despite her faults, she had come a long way from the bony girl who first learned water dancing all of those years ago. With the arrival of spring, Arya knew that other things were on the horizon. Her wedding to Jaime would not be delayed forever. By now, Robb had largely managed to pick up the pieces of the North and put them back together, and Arya was fully healed from her ordeal. Those were both things that had persuaded Lord Tywin to push back the occasion. But soon she would be wed. It was a frightening sort of feeling for her, not because she feared Jaime, but she did fear the change. She feared the idea of so many people watching her, looking to her to be a proper lady. She wished they could skip the ceremony and be done with it, but that was not possible. She was thinking of her impending wedding when Syrio whacked her on the arm with a stick. "You are with your trouble again," he said. "What troubles you today?" Arya bit her lip. It doesn't matter." "It does if it distracts you from our lessons," Syrio said. Arya shifted from foot to foot. She supposed it wouldn't hurt to talk to him. "It won't be long before I am married." The word was strange to say out loud. "Lately, I can't get the idea out of my head. It keeps coming to me at the strangest moments." "Anticipating the future," Syrio said. "You either anticipate or you dwell in the past. Both can be the death of you. The present is where fighting happens. It's where breathing happens too." "I know," Arya said, "but I can't think about the present all the time. I'm not just going to be a fighter, I'm going to be in charge of a great house. I have to think of the future, of every possible future, when I step into that role." Syrio nodded once, acknowledging the point. "That is true. Rulers must think of many futures, but what good does it do you to think of a future that will not change, to fear the unknown when you are already falling into it? That doesn't do much good at all." Arya didn't reply. She flexed the 3 fingers of her right hand. "What do you fear, girl?" Syrio asked. "Does your intended frighten you?" "No," Arya said, "he doesn't." "Your new role then, the role of a lady in charge of a great Westerosi house." "No, well, it makes me a bit nervous, but I think I am prepared for it, and I have many more years to prepare for it before Lord Tywin dies," Arya said. It's the change, I think. Everything will be different, even my name." She was afraid to lose her name, she realized. To go from Stark to Lannister, the idea made her feel a bit sick every time she thought about it. Syrio considered this for a long moment, circling her. "Ah, a changing name. Tell me, girl, what is a name?" It was a strange question, but Arya tried to answer it nonetheless. "It's what people call you. It's who you are." "Those are 2 very different things," Syrio said. "What people call you, who you are, why should you be everything that people call you? If a man called you a mouse, that would not make you one, would it?" "Well, no, but if you call a wolf a lion, does it cease to be a wolf?" Arya bit at her lip. No, Syrio said. "You care for your name and your family, that is right. You fear losing them both. But Stark is who you are, not what people call you." He slipped a finger under her chin and lifted it. "If they call you Lannister or not, it does not change the wolf inside." Arya's mouth twitched into a small smile. No, it didn't. She would always be a wolf and a Stark, no matter what anyone called her. And since when had she cared what other people thought? After all of her lessons with Tywin, she had feared she might be turning into someone unrecognizable from herself. She feared he might be turning her into more of a Lannister than a Stark. But even though he could teach her and marry her off to his son, he had no power over her true identity. I am a wolf, Arya thought. Even surrounded by lions, I am still a wolf. Chapter 63, The Future and the Past. Less than a moon's turn after Syrio returned as Arya's teacher, the Meisters of Old Town declared that spring had officially arrived. Arya expected news of her wedding to follow soon, but, as chance would have it, another wedding was declared first. That of Sansa to Willer's Tyrell of High Garden. Margaery announced it to Tywin before the news was made public to the court. Arya thought it was strange when the Queen arrived at the Tower of the Hand, her smile as sweet as ever. Lord Tywin, and oh, Lady Arya, you're here too. I hope I'm not interrupting. You are not interrupting, my queen, Tywin said. What brings you here? My grandmother sent a letter to me this morning, Margaery said. She hoped I might deliver it to you. Strange, considering she could have sent it directly to me, Tywin raised an eyebrow. Unless she is hopping you will soften the words. Margaery smiled sweetly. Of course not. Everyone knows you are entirely immune to charm, my Lord Hand. Arya bit back a laugh, studying the page of her book intently to keep him contained. Tywin gestured for Margaery to hand over the letter. Arya glanced up as he read it, looking from Margaery back to him. If the contents of the letter irritated him, he did not make it obvious. He only barely furrowed his brow. Then he lowered the letter and glanced at Arya. It appears your sister is soon to be wed. Oh, really? Arya asked with a tone of not at all convincing surprise. To who? To my brother Willers, Margaery said. My grandmother has been in contact with Lady Stark and Lady Sansa for many moons. It's high time Willers wed, and Sansa seems an ideal woman for him. We heard she handled the siege of Winterfell with grace considering her lack of experience. Yes, Tywin agreed, but it seems you have been plotting this since long before the siege. Plotting is hardly the word. Betrothals are made all the time, and my grandmother did not think the matter would be of concern to you. I'm sure she didn't, Tywin said. Very well, I will make the arrangements for the king to travel to the Reach in 2 moons' time. It's time that Tommen be seen outside of the Crownlands. The Reach might as well be his first stop. I thought the same, Margaery said. Spring is just the time for travel. It will brighten the spirits of the people after wars and winter. Undoubtedly, Tywin said in a dry voice. Margaery was sweet and kind at all times, whereas Tywin did not seem to know the meaning of either word. When Margaery had left, Tywin exhaled and tossed the letter to the side. She never falters. It's almost enough to convince one that she is genuine. Whether it's a front or not, I think she is kind, Arya said. She just exaggerates. She has her grandmother's thorns beneath that smile, but it will make her a good queen. He glanced at Arya. You knew of this wedding. Arya raised her book a bit higher so that it covered her face. Yes. Interesting that you did not mention it, Tywin said. Well, I only found out when I returned to Winterfell and Sansa told me, Arya said. Then after that quite a bit happened. To be completely honest, I forgot. She closed her book and set it to the side. Why should it matter anyway? I never knew you had an interest in who my sister married. The Lannisters are in tentative truce with both the Tyrells and the Starks. The dealings of both families are in my interest, Tywin said. Lady Olenna did not select your sister merely for her beauty or skills. She selected her in response to your engagement to Jaime. Arya's brow furrowed. How? I wasn't aware you even told her. I didn't, but she suspected. She has suspected since Tommen and Margaery's wedding. You hadn't engaged me to him yet at the wedding. I was considering it though, Tywin said. Olenna actually had designs on engaging you to Laura's Tyrell and I refused the offer. I suspect she recognized then that I had other plans for you. And then of course word got around to the young queen and she told her grandmother, confirming her suspicions. Tywin tapped his desk. Olenna Tyrell is no fool. By marrying you to my son I would secure a Stark and Lannister alliance. Which means that if the Tyrells and Lannisters were to ever fall into conflict, I would have more families on my side. The Starks through you, the Baratheons through Tommen, and of course the Lannisters. So to be sure that I can never use your family against them, she reaches out to the other Stark girl and secures a marriage alliance between the eldest daughter and her eldest son. And just like that, the Tyrells and Lannisters are balanced again. Arya exhaled. So everything really is politics, isn't it? Even marriage. Especially marriage, Tywin said. The small folk can afford to marry for their hearts. Families like ours must consider the future and our standing in everything we do, or we could lose it. You married for your heart, though, Arya pointed out. There was a silence as Arya realized what she had just said. Forbidden topic. She had just stepped into a forbidden topic. Tywin's face was unreadable for a long moment and Arya was quick to backtrack. I was reading about it in this book today. It mentioned, well, it was about the events that led to Robert's rebellion, and she was named more than once. Tywin did not reply immediately. He seemed to closely study his quill and ink well as he searched for words. Then he nodded once. In that case, my interests and the interests of the Lannister family happened to intersect. We needed to strengthen our name, so marrying another Lannister was a wise move. It showed a united front between our many different factions. Arya sighed. He really was able to bring logic into everything, wasn't he? Still, for a moment she had seen his usual composed nature falter. It does help a match if the man and woman like each other to some degree, Tywin continued. It's just not a necessity. Even if you and Jaime loathed each other, I wouldn't much care, but you clearly don't. Something about his tone made Arya shift uncomfortably. Well, I suppose we are friends of sorts. It does help. Yes, I imagine it does, Tywin said. Anyway, this match between Sansa and Willers, Arya said, hopping to change the subject. It only seems to benefit our families in the long run. You and Olenna have equal connection to the Stark family. The Stark family has equal connection to you. Because of that, we are more likely to stay at peace. You can't leverage us against the Tyrells, and the Tyrells can't leverage us against you. Two of the wealthiest families and one of the oldest are allied against any other potential threats. Yes, true enough, Tywin said, but marriage is not a guarantee of peace. Families are split by civil war all the time. My family will not be, Arya said. We've lost too much already for that. Tywin inclined his head. In any case, I am sure your brother will be travelling south for your sister's wedding. It only makes sense then, for your wedding to Jaime to take place soon afterwards. Your brother cannot afford to travel south twice when the north is still in such a tentative state. Arya swallowed hard. No, that wouldn't make sense, would it? So you have no objections then, Tywin said. It's always funny when you pretend like my objections will matter, Arya said with a sigh as she returned to her book. No, my lord, I have no objections. Arya found herself wandering back to her practice room shortly after her conversation with Tywin. She knew that Syrio would not be there at this time, but she needed some time to process the new certainty of her wedding. For the past several moons it had only been a concept in her mind, a distant, nebulous future. Now it was certain. 2 moons from now her sister would be wed, and a fortnight later, so would she. The door to her practice room was open when she arrived, and she heard someone practicing within. Jaime. She stepped quietly through the door, leaning up against the wall to watch. She didn't want to interrupt him in the middle of a set. He had improved greatly with his left hand. She could tell as much from how he moved, but was especially interesting to her was how he seemed to combine the usual Westerosi style with movements more reminiscent of water dancing. His sword strokes were like that of a knight, but his footwork, that was more Braavosi. It struck her then that perhaps Jaime really had learned a few things from her in their time sparring together. He was the kind of knight I always wanted to be, Arya thought. Strange that I could teach him anything. He finished his set and lowered his sword, breathing heavily from the exertion. Did you not want to join me, Lady Arya? I didn't want to interrupt, Arya murmured. Considerate of you, he sipped water from a canteen. You seem troubled. I'm not troubled, she said slowly. Not quite. Not quite, Jaime repeated. So what are you? Pensive, Arya decided. That seemed the right word to fit her mood. I see, and what has you so pensive? Jaime asked. Arya exhaled. She might as well tell him now. Our wedding is a certain date. In 2 moons my sister is to marry Willers Tyrell at Highgarden. We will marry a fortnight later. Jaime was silent for a long moment as he considered the news. Well, there you have it. I suppose we put things off for as long as we could. He smirked. Thought there's still the shoving me down the stairs idea if it appeals to you. A bit perhaps, but we don't want to risk breaking your one good hand, Arya said. No, it's fine. I'm not so worried about the marriage. I'm worried about the wedding, but not the marriage, that is. I'm not worried about you. Very high praise, Jaime said, though his smirk had softened slightly. I'm not worried about you either. In respect to the marriage at least. The way you seem to attract danger does worry me a bit. Really, I've grown used to it, Arya said. Jaime laughed once. I imagine you have. He stepped forward, taking her left hand in his own. It was strange feeling his palm against her own, both of them calloused from so many hours of working with their twin swords. She supposed she had never really noticed before. Well, we have 2 full hands between us, and an extra 3 fingers. I think that's enough to handle whatever dangers you bring. Arya smiled. The 3 extra fingers will make all the difference. Yes, I think they will. Jaime bent, placing a kiss on the back of her hand, almost in jest. Arya couldn't help but laugh. Are you trying to play the gallant knight, sir? I don't need to play at it. I am a knight, Jaime pointed out. But are you really a gallant one? Am I not gentlemanly enough for you, my lady? No, not nearly. You know that I am extremely concerned with chivalry because I am a delicate young woman. Jaime chuckled and released her hand. Yes, draw your sword and show me just how delicate you are. Arya grinned at the challenge. If you insist, sir. The next day at court, 2 weddings were announced. The wedding of Sansa Stark to Willas Tyrell, and the wedding of Arya to Jaime Lannister. As she stood amongst the lords and ladies of the court, Arya felt every eye turn to look at her. They had seen her in their midst, heard rumours about her for years, and now they saw her in a new light, the woman who would soon become the Lady of Casterly Rock. Their gazes burned, and Arya, quite truthfully, longed to be anywhere else, but she did not show it. She set her expression and lifted her chin only slightly. If they were looking for weakness, they would not get it. If they were looking to cast judgment, she would not care. She was a wolf soon to wear a lion's coat, and she would not be cowed. Cersei was nearly trembling with rage. On the floor of her room, on the other side of her desk, sat a letter from Grand Maester Pycelle, and she had not stopped glaring at it since she had crumpled it and discarded it on the floor. Moons ago, when she first returned to Casterly Rock, she was quick to establish communication with the old Maester, not to act as her ally. Heavens, no. She wouldn't trust the old man as far as she could throw him, and Pycelle was always such a worshipper of her father. No, she merely needed someone to be her eyes, so she played the part of a grieving mother who missed her son and pleaded for updates on his well-being. Pycelle was more than happy to reply. He was loyal to the Lannisters after all, and looked for every opportunity to demonstrate that. In time, Cersei was able to ask other questions of him, about the Tyrells, about her father, about Jaime, about Arya Stark. She framed every question as simple curiosity, and Pycelle did not seem to suspect. Between Pycelle and her other remaining spies, she was kept relatively knowledgeable about every event in King's Landing. But today's news, today, Cersei did not even want to think about it. Of course, she had known for a long time that Arya was engaged to marry Jaime, but now it was certain. Now a date was set, and what was she supposed to do about it? Less than 3 moons away, and her brother would be attached to that awful, wild girl. It had crossed her mind to find some way to disrupt the wedding, but no, her father would see her fingerprints all over that. Even if she could convince him to let her return to the keep to see the wedding of her dear twin brother, he would not take his eyes off of her. She could send an assassin, of course, but even that would point to her as a culprit. Who but her would be so dedicated to interrupting Arya and Jaime's wedding? And if the assassin was caught, it would not take her father long to realize that she had aided the Boltons as well. Why should I care if he realizes, she thought. I don't fear him. Even her own thoughts lied to her these days. Of course she feared him, hadn't she always? It seemed since she was a little girl her father had been a terrifying sort of figure to her. Distant, cold, as immovable as a statue or a god. She did fear him, she hated him, she loved him, she wanted to prove him wrong about everything by beating him at his own game. Wine, I need wines. There was no more wine in her room, so she stood and stalked off in search of some. She had been trying to limit her drinking lately. She needed a clearer head if she ever intended to get her revenge on her father for sending her back. But whenever she was angry, her tongue ached for the taste. Her footsteps struck the stone and filled the hall with the echo. Casterly Rock was such a vast keep that it often seemed empty, even when it was filled with maids and serving boys and lords and ladies. Cersei did not mind the solitude. She was not sure she could tolerate too many people trying to talk to her. But in the midst of walking, she was distracted by a cracked open door, and she paused mid-stride. She was familiar with that door. She recalled having often gone through it during her childhood, and, for some reason, she was called to venture inside again. For a while she didn't move. She stared, standing absolutely still. Then she shook her head and opened the door wide. Inside was a small parlour with lush red carpets and a roaring fireplace. There were shelves full of books along the walls, and on one side sat a pianoforte made of intricately carved white wood. The windows along one side of the room looked out over the edge of the cliffs of the rocks, and one could see the waves crashing below when they looked through. It had been so long since she had entered this room, not since before Robert, no, even longer before that. She was a child the last time she stood here. A wave of melancholy washed over her, bringing memories with it. Her mother used to spend an awful lot of time in this room. Cersei remembered sitting at her feet with Jaime while she read to them. She remembered fawning over her swollen stomach soon before she gave birth, asking if she would have a girl or a boy. Cersei had wanted a girl so she could have a sister. Jaime wanted a boy so that he could have a brother. Jaime won in the end, of course, because didn't he always? And their mother had died to give her monstrous younger brother life. But at the time they had not known what would happen. Neither she nor Jaime had even comprehended that their mother might leave them. They did not truly understand death. Cersei's fingers danced along the keys of the pianoforte. When she pressed down, she found the old thing dreadfully out of tune, but she remembered she used to be able to play quite well. It was a proper activity for a young lady to enjoy. When she was a child, Cersei had rejected most feminine activities because she didn't understand why she should be forced to do things different from Jaime. But she did like the pianoforte because it was something of a puzzle to understand how to play it. It took patience to learn, something Jaime had never had, so she had learned it to impress her parents. Her mother had been impressed, she remembered, and her father, had her father smiled at her once when she played. She recalled he used to smile more often when her mother was alive, but sometimes she wondered if she had imagined it all. She could not picture him smiling at her now. She pressed down on the key again, harder this time, and the room was filled with the awful, strident note. She pressed again and again and again, the same note over and over. I was never enough, I could never be enough. She had once toyed with the idea that she might be her father's heir. After all, Jaime had no interest in being Lord of Casterly Rock at all. And Tyrion, well, he was Tyrion, but Cersei was the firstborn and she had always been an excellent student. That's why when she heard her father planned to marry her off to Prince Rhaegar, she had objected at first. Why must I marry anyone? The rock is my home, I could learn to take care of it. I'm smarter than either of my brothers, you should make me your heir. Are you, her father had asked, and when did you decide this? I know I'm not meant to be merely someone's wife, I am meant to rule. Queens do rule, Cersei. That's not what I meant. And that's when he had presented her with a hypothetical scenario, the Ferman problem. He said that if she was so capable of ruling that the question should be easy for her. One group attacks the Fermans of Fair Isle and the other attacks House Swift of Cornfield. To whom do you give aid? House Ferman, Cersei said, because of their important position on the coast. They are vital to our army because of their navy. They have a strong navy, yes, her father said, but you are wrong. Anyone who attacked them would do so from the coast, and they are well fortified to withstand an attack of that kind. House Swift, on the other hand, is in charge of the majority of our crop production and is in a much less defensible position. Any enemy attacking would undoubtedly go after the fields if they were smart. It could devastate the Westerlands and make us more reliant on others for imports. Would you make the Westerlands reliant on another region? The words had struck Cersei dumb and left her feeling utterly humiliated. She had stammered, unable to come up with an answer. You overestimate your abilities, her father said. I decide my heir, I decide who you marry, and you listen. The Ferman problem had infuriated Cersei for days after. It was a trick question meant to give her father the last word. She knew her brothers would have answered the exact same way. It didn't prove anything. But then how could she argue? How could she move him? From the moment her mother died, he became immovable as stone, cold, distant, never smiling. As Cersei grew a bit older, she saw the value in marrying a prince or a king. In such a position, she would be one of the most powerful women in the kingdom. It was the kind of thing that every woman should dream of, and she learned to dream the same. After Rhaegar died and her betrothed became Robert Baratheon, she resolved to earn the new king's heart and gain power through him. Except that was never possible. His heart belonged to a dead girl, and quickly her marriage turned into a nightmare. Her father had bound her to a drunkard for the purpose of his legacy. If she had answered the Ferman question correctly, might he have not forced her to marry? I wasn't enough. She had never been enough for anyone. She was the lesser twin between her and Jaime because he was a son and not a daughter. She wasn't enough for Robert, who had only wanted Lyanna, and had she been betrothed to Rhaegar, she knew the prince would have abandoned her for the Stark girl as well. Now Jaime was engaged to marry a different Stark girl, and he had barely put up a fight. Did he decide he liked the girl better? No, Jaime loves me. He has always loved me. He must. I have to be enough for someone. She slammed the whole flat of her hand down on the piano and let the sound startle her from her thoughts. Then behind her she heard a voice. Cersei. Uncle Kevan. He had returned to Casterly Rock now that her father had taken back his position as Hand. She shouldn't have been so careless. If he saw her weakness, he could suspect her of being a traitor. Is something wrong? Kevan asked. Cersei let her hand slip away from the pianoforte and she forced a smile onto her face. No, nothing is wrong. I was looking for some wine. I haven't had any all day and I'm rather parched, but I wandered in here and got distracted. Kevan observed her with an almost pitying expression. Cersei hated to see it. She hated when anyone looked at her with pity. She was a lion. She did not need the sympathies of anyone, not even her own kind. Come with me then. I know where you can find some wine. You do seem to be doing better than you were when you arrived. You're drinking less, Kevan said. It is possible that if you continue to improve, your father will allow you to return to King's Landing and your son. I don't think he will, Cersei said with a bitter smile, because it would be of no benefit to him. He has already replaced me. Kevan didn't speak for a moment, but his silence felt like an agreement. Cersei's grip tightened on her glass. He hasn't replaced you, Cersei. He just doesn't know how to handle his mistakes. He would rather ignore them. Cersei fixed him with an icy glare. Are you implying that I am a mistake? I would never dream of it, but Tywin was mistaken in how he handled you, Kevan said. Cersei was surprised to hear him say that. Kevan worshipped her father, his dedicated little brother who would do anything he asked. He did not make a habit of questioning him. He didn't know how to handle you. Not after your mother passed. You looked so much like her and he could barely stand to be near you for that reason. The older you grew, the more painful the reminder. He would never say as much out loud, but it's true. You weren't to blame. I never thought it was, Cersei said, slipping back into her usual control. She swirled the wine in her glass. It doesn't matter. I've long stopped trying to earn his approval. It's nothing to me anymore if he wishes to keep me here where he doesn't have to look upon me very well. Kevan did not reply, but she could tell he was not convinced. Just like her father, he spoke volumes with his silences. It was a family trait. Tell me more about the attacks on the coast, Cersei said, changing the subject. Have they abated yet? Increased, actually, Kevan said, but you needn't worry yourself with that. Why are you worried it will upset my delicate constitution? Cersei asked. I held the rock together well enough when you were acting as Hand to Tommen. You can trust me with this news. Kevan exhaled. Yes, you did do a fine job here. Well, it's nothing that the Fermans can't handle. Likely the ships belong to Greyjoy survivors looking for revenge. The North may have been the ones to subdue them, but they know your father gave the order. They don't have the true manpower to harm us, though. Is that so? Cersei murmured, staring at her reflection, her wine. We'll see. With any luck, perhaps the surviving Greyjoys could be of use to her, but for now she had to bide her time.